I'm Ryan Daws, Senior Editor at TechForge Media. Joining me today is Sterling Chin, who is a Senior Developer Advocate at Postman. Sterling, last year Postman unveiled PostBot. What specific pain points do you envision PostBot addressing most effectively for developers?
Great question. The first off, we went after testing and documentation, the two things that every developer in the world knows that they need to do, but very rarely have time to do it, specifically the documentation side. So the major pain points that it solves is allowing you to, by a click of a button, generate tests for your APIs, generate documentation. Also, it allows you to visualize your data. So instead of looking at and parsing through large JSON objects, you can just visualize it in a way that is pleasing to the eye. So a table, bar graph, map, any way that whatever your data comes in, it can help you with that.
PostBot is designed to understand the deep context of the API being worked upon. How does PostBot achieve this deep understanding? Does it learn from a user's individual workspace or from a larger data set of API interactions?
All of that. So we've trained PostBot on our content. So meaning not customer data, but what specifically on how we write tests, the syntax, and that is proprietary to Postman. And so we've trained it on those data sets, as well as looking at providing it good examples of API documentation. And so that's been trained along on that. But then to get the granular side of to help specific users, it is based on it takes data or takes information from the workspace and uses that as a reference to help. So if Postbot is helping you debug your request, for instance, it will, let's say, one of your environment variables is your environment is turned on a different environment. It can help you, like it'll look at the workspace, say, hey, I think you're looking for this variable. We found it over here. So it does take that context from the user's workspace to help provide better answers to the user.
And how does Postbot's ability to write and update API tests impact the overall quality and efficiency of API development?
It increases development by sometimes 10, 12 times. We've seen large enterprises that have adopted Postbot, and those enterprises that have adopted it and using it to write their tests and documentation are seeing increased collaboration across the board. They're seeing a developers' productivity skyrocket, because now you went from sometimes taking a week to develop an API, write the tests and documentation for it, down to in sometimes less than a day.
And so, talking more generally about the AI industry, there's obviously a lot of discussion about AI replacing jobs. What is Postman's perspective on the potential impact of AI on the developer workforce, and how are you guys preparing for it?
I don't believe that AI is going to replace any jobs anytime soon. What it is going to enhance developers' productivity, and it's going to enhance developers. So, a lot of us here at Postman are adopting AI tools in our day to day life, not just Postbot to build our APIs, but to increase our productivity. I have note taking app bot that comes into my meetings, takes notes for me, for instance. So it right now the idea is we're moving away from the toy idea where AI is just a toy that you can play with, to actually creating a product that is usable. That, I mean, it's not perfect, and AI is never going to be perfect, but we are trying to build Postbot as an assistant to the developer so that they can get what they need and do what they need without, and do it faster without spending tons of time going through documentation. Postbot, for instance, is connected to our learning center, which is updated twice a day. Postbot's access to the learning center is updated twice a day, so it's always got the most up-to-date information. So I mean, in this case, the philosophy here is that we want to increase developers' productivity and not replace them. And I don't think there's any way that AI is going to be replacing a full stack engineer or a QA or anything, someone like that, within the next 10 or 15 years.
From someone who's been in around AI for a long time, that's quite heartening to hear, especially in my industry. Um, how do you view the ethical considerations surrounding generative AI when it comes to sort of code generation, copyright violations, or data interpretation?
That's a really deep question that I could talk on for a long time. Ethically, I think there's obviously when there's proprietary code that is used, I think that's a travesty. I think there's a problem there where we have to, like, ethically, AI has to pull from publicly available information, and not from proprietary content. So first and foremost, Postbot in this case is not trained on any of that. We've been very adamant and very careful about what we use to train. And again, like I said, Postbot specifically is trained on our learning center, which is proprietary to us, as well as the documentation and testing syntax. So those are all proprietary to Postman. That's what Postbot has been trained on. Um, Aside from that, I mean, on a personal note, I think there's a point where AI is we have to come to terms with what the reality of AI is. And there are people who are going to take non-proprietary, or they're going to steal proprietary information. And as companies, as citizens, as developers, as people who are trying to use AI, we have to be aware of that. And I think legislation can help with that, but that's always a couple years in the past. What we need to have the I think the other aspect of that is there's a difference between closed source and open source. On the closed source, we don't know what they're necessarily training on, and it could be that that closed source models were trained on proprietary information. However, open source, we can ensure that we can see the data behind it, and that's why I've become a much more a bigger advocate of open source AI in the last 6 months in the year. So yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have been, especially with the sort of impressive models we've seen come out of Meta and well, maybe we shouldn't talk about the bigger guys and more of the smaller guys, but certainly open source is a big topic at the moment. Tapping into your extensive experience again, looking ahead 5 years, what are some of the most transformative ways you believe AI will impact the API landscape and the way that developers interact with APIs?
That's a deep question that we could talk at length on. In the next 5 years, I think we're going to see similar to what the Rabbit R1 was trying to accomplish, and is still trying to accomplish, is a large action model. I think that's we're going to start to see AIs go out and read someone else's documentation. It'll act as an agent in and of itself, and it'll say, "Hey, I want," as a developer, I could say, "Please go connect to this API," and I think what we'll see is an AI agent that will go out, be able to read through the documentation, assess where the endpoints are. I think you're going to have an AI that's going to help you connect to APIs immediately. And it's going to make it so much easier. So now our whole world is going to be connected through I mean, I firmly believe in the API first world. That's one of the reasons why I'm here at Postman. And I think the AI API first world is going to be even more drastic. You interact with AIs through APIs. And so I think what we'll see is on my phone, I'll talk to an agent and I'll say, "Hey, can you connect? What's my schedule look like?" And it's not only going to connect to my work calendar, but my personal calendar. It's going to interact with my partner. It's going to interact with the school calendars. I think we're going to see much deeper and richer integrations into our daily life. And I think it's going to just make our lives a lot simpler. As much as as more complicated as it seems to be getting, I think it's going to make our lives a little bit more simpler, where I don't have to worry about all the different things. I think AI is just going to immediately just connect us to what we want.
It's fascinating what Rabbit was trying to do there, and hopefully they'll succeed. I know that you're a fellow Star Trek fan, so you
Yep.
probably also want that to succeed. Um,
Yes.
so, is there anything on Postman's roadmap that you can talk about without getting either of us in trouble?
aside from Postbot, on the AI side of things, we're still actively building more integrations into Postbot. So there is more and more integrations. We've got a deeper integration our with our editor. So if you've interacted with Postbot to now, you'll see that we have an autocomplete. If you go in and type pm.test and start to write in natural language your test, the test name, Postbot will do that. Well, we're going to have a richer integration in that editor. So there's going to be more capabilities being built in there, as well as more integrations into the entirety of the API lifecycle. So if you're a producer of APIs, it's going to start to help you in the next couple of years. It's going to help you build your APIs, clean up your YAML files or your open API specs. It's also going to help you as a consumer of APIs. Like, okay, how do we connect to these? It's going to be, the public API network is constantly growing, so there's a lot of work, a lot of integration there. There's other work behind the scenes that I think Postman is not yet ready to share, but I'll tell you one of the philosophies or one of the thoughts that we have is that Postman is all about APIs, and we are AI agnostic, meaning we're not following. We're not saying, hey, we're just with OpenAI or Google Gemini or whatever, or Mistral or whatever the big whatever the AIs are. We kind of sit at the center of everything AI API. So with that, we are looking at how we can be more that focal point where if you're looking at an AI API for the first time, you're coming to Postman and you're going to try it in Postman. You're going to test it in Postman. You're going to be able to evaluate APIs or AI APIs in Postman, and allow and compare to others. So there is work being done on that side, that will be coming out in the future.
Maybe I'll get more out of you next year. Finally, you'll be speaking at this year's AI and Big Data Expo Europe. What will you be sharing with the audience?
I'm really excited about this one. So I'm working on an AI ML playbook. And what it's doing is coming from practicality, the practical implementation of AI here at Postman, going outside of just the toy phase, but working specifically on how do we implement AI in a way that helps our users, and how did we go about that? So what I'm my focus on is an AI playbook for AI and ML ops. So that's the big thing. I'm going to be sharing again the full playbook. So how we evaluated the various APIs, or various AI APIs, how we evaluated, what tools we used to evaluate whether or not the responses we're getting are good or bad. I'm going to talk, I'm bringing in a lot of the resources and the content that my AI researchers have learned over the last year and a half, as we've been focused solely on AI. The content that they're working on, I'm going to be sharing a practical guide to anyone who's trying to implement AI into your industry or into your work or into your product more specifically. That's where I'm gonna be focusing my time.
I bet it's going to be super interesting. Well, thanks for coming along to chat to me today, Sterling, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the AI and Big Data Expo.